What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle-earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and is presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pipe Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. Also, find me on Blue Sky at ProAnt. No underscores on Blue Sky. They don't allow those there. So ProAnt just there. Just that on Blue Sky, I should say. In this episode of Disguise Coverage, bit of a fun one. The Bills are at the bye after playing the first 11 weeks of their season. So in doing, this episode at the bye, kind of wanted to align it with some of the things we see to a degree, with teams when they go into the bye. Bye weeks are very important for teams in order to kind of course correct, reset some areas. You'll see the Detroit Lions are a really good example 2 years ago of who they were going into the bye and then coming out of it. Who they were coming out of the bye 2 years ago kind of set the table for who they were last year and then going into this year as well. Teams take that ability to, again, like I said, course correct, self-scout, tweak some things, being able to have that extra week tying into the next. It allows you to kind of, reset and, chart your course a little bit. And with that in mind, wanted to kind of take stock of who this Buffalo Bills team is after the first 11 weeks, hand out some awards and some superlatives for those first 11 weeks, and also kind of frame and shade who this team is going forward as they try to make a push for the division title. I know it looks pretty good, but no jinx as they try to make a push for the division title, potentially winning the AFC and then potentially maybe winning a Super Bowl as well. And in order to have that conversation and have that journey in this episode, I am joined by one of my favorite people in general, and especially in this space, Mr. Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting, and NFL First Read, also author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you.
Anthony, my guy, good to be with you. Good to be here under these circumstances, going into the bye week after a win against the Chiefs, 6 in a row. It's a good vibe, right? I mean, you're in this content creation space, and boy, it'd been a tough couple of weeks sitting there stewing on a Chiefs loss. Instead, it's a completely different conversation. So, man, I'm glad they won that game for a multitude of reasons, including how much more fun we're going to have over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, like going, you and I were talking offline, and I had an idea for kind of the awards and superlatives we're going to hand out tonight, and I was like, might have to tweak some if it's like a really ugly loss or if it's a really great win, and kind of put some things into perspective. And I guess kind of, to set the table and tone for this episode. And you and I were talking a bit about it offline, temperature check for this Bills team sitting here 11 weeks in, 9-2, second place in the AFC, one loss back in the loss column to the Kansas City Chiefs, but obviously they own that head-to-head tiebreaker now. What are your thoughts on this Bills team? Like we talked about offline before we got started, it got a little ugly there for a minute with those losses to Baltimore and Houston, but their ability to right the ship, quality win against Kansas City, a quality win, I think, also to start the year against the Cardinals team that has really started to turn it around and become a force a little bit. Where are you on this Bills team? Being 9-2, heading into the bye week, the injuries that they've kind of been able to weather the storm with. What are your thoughts overall on this Bills squad?
Really satisfied, Anthony. Really satisfied. They certainly got their lull out of the way, and the Ravens and Texans back-to-back. I think that Ravens game, the game script kind of got away from them, and it was certainly when Baltimore was playing their best football. And then the Houston game, I think too many injuries. I think Josh chased it a little bit in that game in particular, and they got it out of their system and bounced back and won 6 in a row. I love the efficiency of this offense. I love the different ways that they can attack. I love the depth of the playmakers and what that can be coming out of the bye. You think about Cooper, Coleman, Kincaid, Shakir, Curtis Samuel has a pulse. There's a good running back room. Mac Hollins is the next factor. Dawson Knox exists. It's like, man, that's a really nice arsenal for Josh, not to mention how good this offensive line's playing. Then you go to the defense, and it's like, my goodness, the big plays just never stop coming. And you think about Bobby Babich and his first matchup against Andy Reid and how I felt like he pulled a lot of good levers there, and You feel like the coaching in general on the defensive side of the football with how much turnover has existed over the last couple of years, there's just a lot to be excited about, man. And they're stacking wins, and if it's like go win 5 or 6 and see if you can be the top seed, right? I mean, they're in a good spot, man. They're in a really good spot, especially when you layer that with the offseason conversation that a lot of people had about this team. And I like to call it a transition year. Some people called it a rebuilding year or a
I said I was in the revamp camp. That's the label I was using.
Some of the expectations that existed out there just didn't take into account that this is year 8, man. It's year 8 of Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, and it's not like an early tenure where there's not a plan in place to transition and develop. And you think about the player development that's existing on this roster to be able to have guys that can step into major roles, and the pipeline just feels like it gets deeper and deeper after every draft class, and they're loaded with draft capital again this offseason. It just feels like they're in a good spot, man. Really good spot in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and it's funny too how just a little bit of time can change that. You're sitting there and it's they're 3-2, ugly loss to Baltimore, and I'm in complete lockstep with you. I also think Baltimore, with how they're built, isn't an ideal matchup for the Bills. I also think you can say this for a lot of teams, I guess, but when things click for Baltimore, they are unstoppable. They're just a buzzsaw, and things really work for them. But the game script really got out of favor for the Bills, and it showed. Then the next week, some game script issues against Houston, some injury issues, but still a game that you realistically could have won. But you're sitting there 3-2. Those are the two best teams you'd played at that moment. It's looking ugly. Fans are again clamoring for McDermott's head on a stick, as as is tradition here. Right. And to go from that to being now 9-2 and on this winning streak and beating Kansas City again in the regular season and setting themselves up. And then to your point, I think this is a really great one that you mentioned, just that ability to, again, have these depth guys come in and just not see a significant drop off. Even, this week, Ryan Vandermark comes in and is not a hole. You're not just like, oh, well, I knew Ryan Vandermark started because he got whooped like 17 times in that game. Nope. Right. Cam Lewis, the majority of this year. Balin Spector, even when he's coming in. I got a point in one of our topics later that I'm going to mention him for. Just, Milano is done to start the year. Dorian Williams, playing up a little bit. And then again, Bernard goes down. So you've got Spector, what you've been able to get out of Hamlin and Rapp, the development and trajectory we've seen for Christian Benford. And I guess even tying into Benford as well, like the development and trajectory of Taron Johnson to becoming where he is, and again, two secondary guys, but the job this coaching staff has done, from Babbage to McDermott to Brady to Cromer to all the individual, position coaches, it really just is this collective effort that I think at the best of times really gets talked about from a culture standpoint, but at the worst of times, people really just rake them over the coals left and right. But when you kind of just look at it from a baseline level, this is a well-run organization from top to bottom, from the scouts to the GM, to the actual on-field execution and game planning, to the players. And like you said, that pipeline, and things are almost kind of just like in this rinse and repeat cycle where, again, if there was a year for the Bills to be like 5-6 after week 11 or like 7-4 or something ugly, you feel like it kind of would have been this year. No jinx for anything in the future. But here they are in the revamp year, or however you want to label it, and they're sitting here 9-2. It's just, they just do it like year after year, it feels like.
Had a conversation on today's episode of NFL First Read, which is a podcast that I do with Brett Whitefield for Fantasy Points. We do it a couple times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It drops, and it's been a lot of fun. But our conversation today was, who are the actual teams that can win the Super Bowl?
Nice.
And then from there, it was, who's their most important player that's not their quarterback? And we got it to we came up with 7 teams that we think, these are the teams that we really think, can win the Super Bowl this year. And then we went through each one of them. And step one was, okay, who are the cornerstones? Who are the guys that deserve to be part of the conversation? And you go to any team, the Ravens, it's like Linderbaum, Andrews, Flowers, Henry, Matabuik, Roquan, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton. I could do this for all the other teams, the Eagles, the Lions. You get to the Bills, and I'm talking to Brett about it. He's like, who is it?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I got Deion Dawkins and Greg Rousseau and Terrell Bernard and Christian Bedford. He goes, Joe, you just told me that Josh Allen's the MVP of this league. Like the players, the household names that exist on all these other teams is not like the ones that you just gave me for the Buffalo Bills. And I said, I hear you on that, but I think it's just a matter of the world needs to be reintroduced to the Buffalo Bills. It's not Diggs and Davis and Trey White and Poyer and Hyde. It's, let me tell you about Khalil Shakir and Terrell Bernard and Christian Benford, et cetera, James Cook, whoever, these are the players. Like, it's time for the world to know that Spencer Brown's a high quality right tackle in the NFL, right? People need to know that Terrell Bernard is an impact playmaker, not wondering when Matt Milano returns if it's going to be Dorian Williams or Terrell Bernard that has to go to the bench, right? The world just doesn't know this iteration of the Bills. I think they're finding out little by little here.
That's a really good statement and point. And that was one of my big concerns going into this year. Like, you had your two A-tier players were Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. And, Deion Dawkins would kind of like flirt with that for me, at least, like at times. But I figured, like, at his best, he was kind of like a B-plus kind of guy. But you're guys who were like the best, like top tier of their position were Diggs and Allen. And then Diggs goes, and then it's Allen. And then you're like, okay, what do you have in the rest of this team? Is it a bunch of C-plus guys or B- guys or B guys? And just, the growth and development and, who said it? Charles said it here in the comments, saying what's cool is most of the Bills' future core is young and ascending. The ascension of several of these players, Christian Benford and Bernard, really in particular, just playing to levels that if they were more household names, they would be covered every day on NFL Live or whatever football show exists on NFL Network, if they still have one. I know they torpedoed a whole bunch of them. Like, just they are playing at levels and doing things that are slowly starting to get recognition. But it reminds me a little bit, you mentioned Milano. It kind of reminds me of the Milano trajectory, where for like a couple years, Milano was balling out and playing great, and no one really talked about him or knew about it. And then all of a sudden, he has that all-pro year, and every single game, everybody's like, whether it's Collinsworth or whoever on whatever broadcast is talking about how great Matt Milano is, and they're showing metrics and stats. And I feel like next year is that year for like Bernard or Groot or Benford and that next crop of guys. Because to your point, they do have this really fun group of kind of B-plus guys who are starting to become more and are stepping into that leadership role and that core player role. But from a national perspective or a large-scale perspective, no one's doing that. Like, if you say to somebody right now, well, I think the Bills can really do good defensively because of Terrell Bernard and Christian Benford, you'll probably
Who?
Yeah, exactly. I think 50% of the people will be like, what? Like, well, who are they? Like, what is that? I mean, like, I thought Taron Johnson was their corner. Like, no, like, he's the nickel. Like, Benford plays outside. They'd be like, oh, okay, like, I guess. Yeah, just it's funny to see like how this team, and you need that, right? Like, it's funny to see what this team has become, but you need that in a revamp year and a going forward year as you start to not retool, but you do kind of reset some things. You need that new group to establish themselves and take hold and buoy and buttress things on and off the field. And the Bills have really started to get that this year. I hate saying all these positive things because I'm so superstitious and it just makes me feel like everything's going to fall apart, but it's been really nice.
Yeah, dude, I think you summed it up really well. I mean, even a guy like Khalil Shakir, it's like people are like, oh, this guy's really fun. Well, welcome to the party. You know what I mean? Like, they'll eventually get it. I remember I took a lot of questions going into the year when the NFL 100 list came out, and it's like, Joe, they only have Allen, Dawkins, and Milano, and the Dolphins have 9 players, and the Chiefs have 8. And it's like, are we really? I was like, I don't know what to tell you. These guys, people don't know them yet.
Exactly.
They don't know them yet. But I think the world's finding out, and obviously, you get a game like the last one against Kansas City, you see the record-breaking numbers, 33 million people watch it. It's like, well, I guess you probably learned about Shakir, and you probably learned about Bernard, and you should have learned about Benford if you were paying attention. You should see what Greg Rousseau can do, and you'll get reacquainted with this new nucleus. And, man, it's a really healthy spot to be, and hopefully Bean can nail the extensions. And when they're extended, they stay healthy, right? That's going to be the big thing.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, it's funny too. I wanted to bring up a couple of these comments. One from Roy saying it'll be interesting to see how many of these young players the Bills can actually pay. And then Sarah said we got to get our guys paid now. That starts that next like fun, a lot of off-season conversation at the very least of like, who do you pay and how much? Because now you're kind of running into that area of, okay, you know, we can only pay 3 of the 4, 4 of the 5. Which 4 is it, or which 3 is it, and how do you kind of flesh all that out? I think that's a really fun conversation, and potentially stressful. I also wanted to pull up one more comment. This is related to the last time you were here. Kevin here said, "I'm here for the discussion on athletic aesthetics," and I just thought this was awesome.
Yeah, man, we'll see what organically comes up here. The Bills are, there's nothing Bills related. They're wearing the same uniforms they always wear, right? Yes. The field art's exactly the same. So
one thing that made me feel great after the last time we did our episode, and there was like the amount of people that were like tagging us in tweets for the next like couple of weeks to be like, man, you guys watching this college game with these two teams playing here? Like their jerseys are great, or their end zones look crappy, or did you see this logo? And I was like, this is awesome. That was one of the most rewarding like things I've ever experienced doing this.
Let's fire off a couple takes. I know this is your show, but I hate the Packers white helmets. I think they look bad.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm not digging that. And boy, the Broncos, boy, did they whiff. Boy, those uniforms suck.
They look like bad. What bothers me with the Broncos is twofold. One, these current jerseys look like a bad version of the Bears jerseys. Two, the orange crush jerseys are immaculate. Just do those. What are we doing? Just do those. The orange jersey, the light blue helmet with the kicking Bronco. Do that, and then the all whites for the away. Just do that. What are we doing?
I think my favorite uniform I've seen this year is Jacksonville's throwbacks.
Oh, I tell you, Jacksonville's throwbacks.
But their matte white helmet is terrible. That we got to put that right in the trash.
Yeah, it's weird. They're another one too. Like I never liked the change, and I don't know if it's the nostalgia in me with like Mark Brunell and Tony Baselli and Jimmy Smith and James Stewart and Fred Taylor, and Donovan Darius. But yeah, give me those old school Jags unis. And I think this might be like kind of a hot take, but I'm glad that you also really like those. I think those old school Jags jerseys are up there in like that conversation with like the throwback Seattle, the creamsicle Bucks for me, and even the orange crush Broncos. I really like those Jags jerseys. And I feel like if they do that, that'll kind of right the ship for their whole organization.
Right. Well, I think the distance makes you appreciate that, right? You think about the teams that you just mentioned, think about the bad uniforms that they've had along the way, which I think makes you yearn for those uniforms that at the time you probably didn't appreciate enough. But as they've continued to botch the redesigns, you're like, boy, we had something. We're just getting further from it. And I think Jacksonville, and that's the thing about bad teams, right? They always just change their uniforms all the time. So you're also reminded of that's peak Jacksonville, like you mentioned all those names. I mean, how dare you not mention Keenan McCardell? I'm sure he's very upset about that. But yeah.
I could have kept going. I didn't want to name like too many.
Yeah, but you got to Donovan Darius and we didn't get Keenan McCardell in there. I was like, I don't know, bro. I don't know if we can continue here. Fair. So
I do have one quick aesthetic piece. Puka mentions, he says the Ravens matte helmet was nice. What are your thoughts on matte helmets? I personally hate them. They make me feel like I'm looking at a chalkboard, and I can feel the roughness, and I don't like it. I don't like matte anything, cars, any type of matte finish, but especially on helmets, I don't like it. What's your feeling on it?
I think sometimes they work. I think they work pretty well for Minnesota. I like them there. I didn't like them for Jacksonville. For Baltimore, when I watched them with that, I thought that was a uniform that looked a lot better close up than it did like when you're just watching the game.
Oh, I think it's a good call. Yeah, when they would zoom in. Yeah, I was like,
it's like, wow, that looks really good. You zoom out, it's like, man, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm looking at. And it's almost made me think, is it because it's all purple? Like if they had a white jersey with that helmet, would I be able to appreciate the helmet a little bit more? But you could be right. It just could be the dullness of the helmet that makes it look like more monochromatic
or whatever.
Thank you, God. I was never going to come up with that word.
I wasn't sure that it was the right word, but I was like, I'll throw it out there.
Yeah. Well, it sounds good to me. Maybe it's not correct, but it sounded good. Yeah, it's like that dullness with the one color all the way through. I think it really kind of takes away. I think you need the shine there. So if you give me the matte helmet, I think I need the white, the contrasting color jersey.
Some kind of pop.
But unless it's white, the white matte is gotta. We can't. There's no time. We have no time for that.
That's fair. I can't do matte in general. The Ravens one I actually kind of liked a little bit, but like you said, like I liked it more close up. Also, you could see the pops of the yellow and how everything fit. And then you'd go to the regular broadcast angle, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. Man, I already made a note of it the last time you were on. Off season, when it's like we're in the doldrums of the off season, we're going to do like a football aesthetics episode, everything from jerseys, college, NFL to field aesthetics. We're going to run the whole gamut. I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited for it.
Here for it.
Ooh, all right. We want to dive into it. Anything else? Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. Whenever I get on the horn with you, man, it's like the side tangents. I mean, even in the 10 minutes we had before the show, it's like, probably think you get in for 10 minutes playing the show. The next thing you know, we're talking about the man stress. You know what I mean? And like compartmentalizing our lives. So I don't know what it is about you, man. But
we've done it on your show too. I'm thinking the one time I was on, we went off on like the 6-minute tangent on the Charlotte Hornets and Glenn Rice and like that whole deal. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. For those playing at home, Joe and I are going to be handing out some awards and some and placing some superlatives regarding the first 11 weeks of the Buffalo Bills and potentially framing some things for the future and the rest of this season. So as I bring up all the headers and, we show you what the topic is and we give our answers, for those of you watching live, playing at home, or even if you are watching or listening not live, feel free to put your, if you're not watching live, put your thoughts, questions, comments, answers up into the YouTube comments, tweet at us, whatever you want. And for those of you watching live, throw your answers up into the live chat here. If you hate our answers, let us know. If you love our answers, let us know. I will bring up as many comments and thoughts and answers from you folks as physically and humanly possible. Joe, is there any one of these topics that you feel very strongly about in starting with first, or should we just go in the order of which I gave them to you?
Let's just go in order. In order. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go in order. So the first one is the player that has exceeded your expectations the most. And again, for those watching, listening, all that stuff, I don't know Joe's answers. He doesn't know mine. We're keeping this very organic and kind of blind to everything. So that way we can foster better conversation. Joe, the floor is yours. Who is the Buffalo Bills player that has exceeded your expectations the most these first 11 weeks?
I'm going with the player that entering the year I had zero expectations for, mostly because I had no idea what to expect. It's Von Miller.
Okay.
I mean, last year was just terrible. I didn't think he could play anymore, And so it's like, on one hand, he's further removed from the ACL tear. On the other hand, he's 35 years old, man. I didn't know what to expect. And so my decision was I wasn't going to have any expectations. And then anything that Von Miller provided that was good, you take it. And lo and behold, now I'm excited when he's on the field. I think you're seeing a lot of the traits that have made Von Miller, in a Hall of Fame caliber pass rusher with a lot of burst and bend. And his strike timing has been really good. He's not a super long-armed, heavy hands guy, but I've seen him run some dudes over with just like really savvy timing with his one-arm stab and he rocked over Juwan Taylor a couple times against the Chiefs. So yeah, I think one of my biggest concerns was, do the Bills have enough juice when it comes to pass rush? And Von Miller's value has inspired that the Bills might be okay in that capacity. Of course, he had the suspension and missed time, but 4 sacks in 7 games, man. And even some good run defense. I think the last couple of weeks, the run defense has been there in ways that kind of surprised me as well. So Von Miller has definitely exceeded my expectations, which were nothing.
That's a fair one and a good one. I wasn't neutral on him, but I thought he could be like an a high-end edge 3 or like a middling edge 2 this year from an overall, production standpoint. And even within that, I was pleasantly surprised to see how he's been moving each week. Like you said, like the bend, the athleticism, and you spoke so much on the pass rush piece. I don't have too much to add with that. For me, and you alluded to it, the run defense has been something that I've been really excited with for him. And that's always been an aspect of his game that he's been good at, but it just gets so far overshadowed by what he is as a pass rusher from his time in Denver and even with his time with the Rams. But he's been a good run defender, and he's had multiple really good run defense reps for the Bills this year, even really starting right off the bat against Arizona. That first half, Arizona's running pin and pull and just mashing everybody on the edge left and right for the Bills. And then Von has a couple reps in the second quarter and the third where he just gums up the whole thing, and he's beating up tight ends. He's shooting underneath tackles, and we've seen that kind of consistently happen week over week. I've been very impressed with how he's just come back, even with someone who, like myself, who I didn't think he was washed. I didn't think he was done. I didn't think he was going to be the guy he was before the injury, who again was still special even when he was here in Buffalo. But I think that's a good answer. And I think you would get that from a good amount of people, because there was such a lot, and I don't know if it was a loud majority or a very loud minority who thought that Von was done and he was cooked and it was over. But you saw some of those little flashes towards the end of the year last year, and he carried it in here real quick. I want to grab this super chat from Carl. We got so deep in the conversation, I missed it. I apologize, Carl, and thank you for letting me know in the chat that I did miss it. I appreciate you keeping me honest. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the super chat, Carl. And Carl says the Bills in 2021 should have gone further, but for 13 seconds. They were contenders in 2022 and 2023, but were decimated by injury. In 2024, they are healthy, and healthy is in all caps. One, no jinx. So whatever everybody needs to do to make sure we don't jinx that, make sure we don't jinx that. But two, yeah, I think they've had injuries, which, we've talked about, but as we go down this stretch, they do feel like they will be in a healthy spot. We'll see what Matt Milano looks like when he returns. We'll see what Smoot looks like when he returns. Carter, the rest of this group. Shakir was banged up at one point. He's starting to get a little healthier. We'll see what happens with Kincaid. We'll see what happens with Brown. They should be relatively healthy for that home run stretch as we get into December and we start to push into January a little bit. And it's funny, it usually gets said come playoff time, but usually the best teams in the playoffs are the healthiest teams in the playoffs. And if the Bills can stem that tide, man, I hate having the conversation, but I really do feel like last year that divisional game against the Chiefs was so close anyway. But no Benford, no Bernard. Rasul Douglas is playing on one leg. Daquan came back but wasn't healthy. That whole defense was decimated. And so if you're healthy enough, combined with the talent, what they've got going on schematically, I think that's a very fair thought, Carl. And I appreciate you sharing that with the super chat. Any thoughts on Carl's comment, Joe? I don't want to.
Just needed to stay that way.
Yes.
Keon Coleman's another one.
Good call. Yep.
Got to be mindful of whatever heck is going on there. Don't really know. So hopefully he's back and ready to go. I think the good news is they haven't put him on injured reserve, but
good call.
Yeah, and you just never know, man. You never know when you plant and a ligament snaps or your leg gets rolled. It's just, you think you're healthy until you're not. And they can come in bunches. Think about the Dolphins this year or last year at this time. It was like, okay, there's Chubb. There goes Phillips. There goes Connor Williams. There goes Teron Armstead. Yeah, it's like,
little
okay.
by little.
You never know when it's your turn. So knock on wood and hope it stays that way.
I like that. That's one of the reasons too. I know everybody kind of wants things that are done right for their teams, but it's part of the reason why I will never ever fault any professional athlete, but especially in football, I will never fault any player for chasing the bag in free agency at any way, shape, or form. You literally know it could be a game, it could be practice, it could be working out. Your next movement could literally be your friggin' last. So I never have any qualms with anybody chasing after big money in free agency, trying to get that payday and that security, because you can make a catch and you get hit and you just plant the wrong way and your ACL goes or your Achilles goes or God knows what else. And all of a sudden you are done. So yeah, very fair. I had several, and there were a lot of really good comments for this one, for player that has exceeded your expectations the most. I went with Khalil Shakir just because of the year that he has started to put together. So, and really what he's meant in totality to Josh Allen and to the offense. He's got 599 receiving yards. 473 of those are after the catch. Through these 11 weeks, amongst 47 wide receivers with at least 50 targets, he's 9th in EPA per target, 6th in total EPA, 3rd in success rate, 13th in yards per target, 7th in yards per route run. He has the lowest average depth of target at 3.5 yards, also the lowest average depth of catch at 2.6 yards. He's 3rd across the entire league in total yards after catch. He's 2nd amongst wide receivers, only to Jamar Chase, who's had some ridiculous back-to-back weeks when it comes to Yak. What he's been to this offense and to Josh Allen and to a position group that's been banged up a little bit, that's another conversation that I'm going to speak at later in this episode. But just what he's become, I thought highly of him coming out of Boise State. I was surprised that he lasted until the 5th round. but just seeing the level at which he's played at and the way that he finds success. And I think a lot of this conversation, right, is all based on the expectation, right? If you thought Shakir was going to be sweet this year and then you see how he's performing, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of expected that. Or if you thought someone was going to suck and they're playing good, I think Dorian Williams could have been one that could have fit in here for me just because I saw his struggles last year. And I think some of them have still shown this year. I do think Dorian Williams has improved and has made a lot of strides. He's gotten some good time on task, a phrasing that you like to use a lot. And I think you've seen that progression in his game, but I do still think there are some holes. I think there's I don't want to get on a tangent, but far too many people are like, well, even when Milano comes back, should he even go on the field? Shouldn't Dorian stay on there? I'm like, no, you're out of your mind. Like, no, he should not stay on there. But I think Dorian, it was a contender for this this question as well for me, just with what I thought he was and where he's kind of gotten to. But for me, it's Shakir. I already thought he was a good player, but I thought where he fell on the hierarchy of the pass catching options for this team compared to where he is now and just what he's able to do kind of on his own in a lot of ways from the average depth of target and catch and yards after. He's really just exceeded so many expectations. And I already thought highly of him, and he's just surpassed that even further with what he's done on tape, but also statistically and from an advanced metric standpoint.
I think you've invoked a lot of good names. I think if there's another guy that deserves a shout out, it's probably James Cook.
He was here for me too. I really thought of him. Yeah.
The really good vision improvements, I thought, in decision making, man. He's running that cutback zone extremely well. So I think he's got 10 rushing touchdowns. I mean, I'd have lost a lot of money if you told me that James Cook was going to have 6 rushing touchdowns this year, but he's been able to kind of win with speed in the goal line. And even last week, you saw some yards after contact. I mean, certainly still some issues, still some drops, doesn't help on pass production, pass pro. Yeah. But I think as a runner for this multiple run scheme, I really have been satisfied with him.
I tweeted it earlier today, and I've talked about it the past couple of weeks. His ability to the physicality and toughness and contact balance with which he's running this year, and being able to do that while not sacrificing the juice and the speed and the athleticism has really been something to behold. And when you factor that in to the run game diversity the Bills have conceptually, we know that he can flow on zone, but now he's able to get downhill on duo. He's hitting the hole, on the tackle pull stuff and other gap schemes that they work. And then, he can run through a corner or a safety or fall through a linebacker for a couple extra yards. Like, it's just that extra level of power to his game, but he's been able to add it without sacrificing the juice. And, the 2 touchdown runs against Kansas City, I thought were great examples. The first one is a zone run that Kansas City, has them is gapped out. He turns the corner purely because of speed. He makes that play happen on his own. Karlaftis, or I forget who shoots in the B gap. He has to bounce it a little, and then he gets outside of Chanel.
Tranquil's the guy he beats on the angle.
Yes. Yeah, he beats Tranquil on the angle, and whoever shoots in the B gap, he beats the guy in the B gap first and then beats Tranquil around the corner. It's all speed. And then the second run for the touchdown is duo, and he runs through Brian Cook, Bolton through a shoulder, and I forget who else. He runs through 3 dudes and falls forward for 2-3 yards and gets in the end zone. Just seeing that is such a good representation of he's still got the juice and the speed to make things work and make something out of nothing. And then he's got the physicality to also go through dudes. Him adding that level to his game, I thought was really, really, really nice. Let's flip this to kind of a negative side. The player that has fallen below your expectations the most. So we went on the positive side, who's exceeded the expectations the most. Now we hit the other end of the spectrum. Joe, for you, these first 11 weeks, who is the Buffalo Bill that has fallen below your expectations the most?
I think it was probably last year at this time I had the epiphany that there were some parts of this roster that were expired. I think I even came on this show and I said, hey, I think it's time for some transition in some spots. I think it's dated and they got to get younger and cheaper. And I started to really champion that on the podcast. And then, obviously Brandon Bean agreed. And so they went through this whole process to get younger and cheaper and transition, but they broke the rule for one guy. And it's one guy that I wanted them to break that rule for. It's Daquan Jones. I was like, you know what, if there's one guy that, it just makes sense to bring him back as the one tech. I really like what he's shown. I think that he'll be the answer there. And one techs, they age pretty gracefully. I think that's the guy that you break the rule for. And 10 weeks or 10 games was 11 games into the season. I'm starting to wonder if that was the right move to make. I just don't think he's been effective. And I think it really stood out to me against Kansas City, where I think it's well understood that I'm not a big Jordan Phillips guy. I think Jordan Phillips was objectively better against Kansas City than Daquan Jones. And I know that middle three is really good. And so I temper my expectations, but I thought Jordan Phillips was better against Kansas City than Daquan Jones. And I'm hoping that it comes together for Daquan. I'm sure he's never been a guy that didn't give max effort and do everything he could to play his best football. And I know he's got a couple of different injuries that he's been battling this season, but as the exception to the rule this offseason, it's just not quite paying the dividends that I hoped it would when he came back on a 2-year deal.
So, I'm going to speak on that because this is also tied to mine. I labeled it as just kind of like the interior defensive line in general.
Yeah,
I kind of like grouped it. Daquan is at the head of it. Unfortunately, from like a first tier perspective, even I know Ed Oliver's been banged up. I think Ed fell into that a little as well, just kind of being a ghost out there, getting pushed around a bit. But I think Ed, these past several weeks, we're starting to see more of that juice. He's starting to cause havoc. He had a couple of really, really, really strong reps against Kansas City, defeating double teams, getting into the backfield, getting some pressures. But yeah, Daquan, and you hit everything on the head. Like, it's positioned that ages kind of gracefully. Like, he's so smart. He fits the defense well. And before he went down last year, was playing at an all-pro level.
Yeah.
He was an absolute game wrecker against the pass and against the run. And then it's not like the injury that he had, it was a pec. It's not like, well, he's coming back from an Achilles or he's coming back from this, hamstring tear or this devastating knee injury. It was like, oh, it's a pec. He'll be fine. Like, his wheels are still good. The mentality's still there. The physicality's still there. And yeah, you're just not seeing that same level of impact. So he's fallen below expectations for me, more so than even him for me. I labeled it kind of like a sub bullet within this, the second and third wave, I guess, because we've seen so many of interior defensive linemen. I like the Austin Johnson signing in the offseason, but I don't know if they had him cut weight. He looks trimmer, and I feel like he's caught in between playing like 3 tech and 1 tech. Like, I think he's better suited to play at 1 tech, but now he doesn't have that size anymore because he trimmed down. Dwayne Carter coming out from Duke and watching his college tape, I did have worries about him handling double teams, and he struggled there at the NFL level. He's getting displaced and just blown out the gate. But he's also struggled just from some individual one-on-one base blocks, and he's been almost non-existent as a pass rusher, which is the one area I thought you kind of hang your hat on with him, again, coming out of Duke. He's tied, as of right now, tied for 88th in terms of pass rush productivity amongst 117 qualifying interior defensive linemen. You got Phillips and Jefferson now off the scrap heap who have been fine, but I don't think either are much to write home about. I thought this group, and it's funny too, like, and not to make it sound like worse, I was worried about the interior defensive line going into the season, and they still fell below my expectations. Like, I thought they'd be middling and fine, but I think they've been a bit porous in a multitude of ways against the run and the pass. So Daquan, I think, heads it. Ed was there for a bit, but he looks to have righted the ship a bit. But I really think, like, outside of that, like, this position group as a whole has really kind of disappointed me and fallen below expectations.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to frame it. I tried to make it like specific to a player, but I think I'd agree with you that collectively,
I cheated. I'm sorry.
And I wonder how much, I think Dwan Smoot, I know he's an edge player, but I think they wanted to play him reduced inside a lot. I think he was a big part of the plan there. And really have never had an extended enough opportunity to see him in this group. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess the good news is that there's still time, and we know that those are better players than they've been. And so if that's maybe a realistic path to some in-season growth to get impact in an area where you feel like it should be better and can be better. And maybe that'll be a storyline for the last 6.
Yeah, fair. One last quick one for this one. And I nixed it just because he's been hurt. Curtis Samuel, I think, could have fallen in here, but we knew he got banged up like right out of camp. And so I do think he's fallen below expectations, but I don't want to say give him a pass, but I do kind of want to give him a pass because he's been banged up and playing through it. And now that he's gotten healthier these past couple of weeks, we've seen a turn. I think the Kansas City game was a great example of what he kind of can be, but you and I were both at training camp. We saw how much of a focal point he was and how he was being used. I think we would have seen more of that had he not been hurt, but that's a very fun one. All right. The next one that we got also tied into a little bit of a negative aspect, but a little more forward thinking here. Your biggest area of concern going forward, Joe, what do you got?
I still think it's the collective impact of the defensive line. And I know that Kansas City was a really good performance for the defensive line collectively. I thought they cage rushed extremely well and they had a good plan. But am I concerned that there's still some issues with, light boxes on defense and the D-line being able to anchor and fit like they're supposed to? Am I still concerned that, in big moments, late in games, can they get huge pass rush? At times, I think it's really good, and at other times, it feels like it's missing. Even like you go back to the Colts game against Flacco, like when it hit, right? But like, where's the consistent pressure? Again, I know that I don't want to become a victim of the moment because of the Kansas City game, because I think it was excellent against Kansas City. But I think the broader sample size of the year has kind of told me that the run defense can be leaky and the pass rush can be quiet at times. And so that's kind of the area where I still find myself with a little bit of pause and concern about it showing up when this team needs it the most.
I think it's very fair. And I'm in a very similar boat. I kept it to the interior defensive line, in specifics, the rotation, which I'll talk about, but I do think that's a fair overall, like looking at the D line. I love the year that Groot has put together, him really developing more of an inside move to go. He's never going to be this bendy, twitched up, change of direction dude who's going to dip and bend and turn the corner, but his ability to kind of go speed to power, use his length, but then that inside move where he can take a couple steps upfield and then just quickly pry you open on your inside shoulder and get to the quarterback has been really nice to see. But a lot of his production this year has really come in like several spurts and moments. Like the Tennessee game was a big one. And like you mentioned, from a down in, down out production standpoint between Groot, Epinesa, Vaughn, Smoot, I guess, when he comes back, I don't know if that production is always consistently there. So and that effectiveness, I should say, is always there. So I do worry about that a little bit. I just worry about it less than, again, the interior defensive line rotation. And my biggest concern with it, the pass rush piece is there, but it's really the combination of, lacking juice against the pass, but also stoutness versus the run. The Bills have to stop the run with numbers far too often, or work in run stunts, run blitzes, which I like. I love run stunts. I love, slanting dudes and scrape exchanges and all of that, but it can get risky. Like, doing that comes with its own set of risk. And then on top of that, for as much maligned as Daquan has been and Ed has been, this year, if either one of them go down, if anything happens to one of them, again, they haven't been world beaters themselves this year. And even with Ed coming on a bit lately, that interior defensive line is scary. Like, even with Daquan underperforming and Ed to a degree, after that, it just gets really worrisome. And I know the metrics kind of balance out a little bit, like with who they are defensively. They've given up a ton, of 10+ yard runs, but they're second in the league in stuff percentage, and they're top 10 in EPA per rush. And they, I don't remember what they are in terms of DVOA against the run, but last week they were like 6th against the run. Like, this is still a grouping that, statistically, and when you add in context and situation and all that kind of stuff, is good. The Bills right now are 7th in terms of rush DVOA. So all these metrics speak to them being good. And I know the adjustment nature of the Bills defense, come out, play our kind of bland defense with some tweaks to start, and then based on what you do, we'll adjust from there. Great changes from an EPA standpoint, first half to second half. They're like one of the worst defenses from an EPA per rush and EPA per play standpoint in the first half, top 3 and top 5 in almost all of those same metrics in the second half. They really adjust well and course correct as the game goes on. But I do worry about that defensive line, especially with, Von Miller said it after the Chiefs game this week. They're the tip of the spear. They are the tone setters. They do so much, not just in the pass, but also with the run. Like, Terrell Bernard is great. If you can get dudes to Terrell Bernard, Trey Smith buried Terrell Bernard a couple times in this game because he was able to get to that second level. You need that interior.
That's not a fair fight, though, right? You know what I mean?
No, but that's part of what I'm saying. Like, Bernard is so smart and he's so quick and he's so great, but he is very undersized for the position. You want to keep him clean so he can do all the awesome stuff that he does. Even Milano to a degree as well. Your defensive line is so important, the starters and the rotation, in terms of generating pass rush, because we know McDermott wants to rush 4 and just play coverage behind it. So you need them to be able to rush the passer. You also need them to be able to hold ground against the run, to anchor, to not get displaced, but also get some penetration. And the interior has really scared me for a multitude of reasons. Not protecting the second level enough, but also just getting beat and worked individually in a vacuum. That's a spot that really concerns me, because I just think again, we talked about game script. For as much as the Bills have adjusted well on defense, all it takes is kind of just one of those games. And again, maybe it's not fair to judge them on a sample size, something like that, but all it takes is one of those games in the wild card or the divisional round, and all of a sudden you're down 21-0 because you're getting gouged left and right, and then the offense doesn't score, and now all of a sudden you're on the back foot. Your offensive game plan has to change, which doesn't fit the nature of the offense because of what happened to the defense. You're not playing complementary football, so on and so forth. I am very concerned about the interior defensive line, because even when they come back healthy, I don't love Carter and Johnson behind Daquan and Ed. And then if it's not Carter and Johnson, is it Jefferson and Phillips, or whatever combination? No disrespect. I don't feel good about any of that. And I wouldn't feel good even if Daquan and Ed were playing like they both did last year at their highest. Even if they were both crushing it, I'd be like, sweet, are they going to play 90% of snaps? Because the second wave isn't getting it done.
Right.
But that's now a worry even more, because Daquan isn't crushing it. Ed, again, has been looking a little better, but hasn't been crushing it all year. That's a spot that really worries me, especially against, if they play up against Baltimore or even against Pittsburgh, or as Houston starts to get a little healthier and their run game starts to click a little bit and how everything ties in. Kansas City was a good example too. And again, Von talked about it after the game. They got gouged on first and second down in the run consistently. It was just 6 yards to Kareem Hunt, 7 yards to Kareem Hunt, 4, and then 8, and just here and there. And I know the Bills they're willing to do that and play the numbers over the top and light boxes and nickel and all that stuff. We've had this conversation a million times as a community, but yeah, that's a spot that really scares me. And I like your point as well, just the D-line in general, being able to consistently get pressure, tying that into the run. Yeah, it scares me a little bit. And it was an issue that I had concerns with coming into the season too.
Detroit's going to be interesting. And even the Rams to an extent. If the Rams get their middle three, I think they're still getting healthy and figuring themselves out. But we're going to find out some things those weeks. And then also, I know getting way down the line, I think you mentioned Baltimore within the conference. I think Steelers within the conference, Kansas City within the conference, especially when they get Pacheco back.
Yep.
But you're let's face it, the Eagles or the Lions are going to win the NFC. You're going to have to beat them in the Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is definitely looming large on my mind. The X factor is that you score, right? The X factor is that you score. The one thing that I can't reconcile about the Baltimore game is how were the Bills, the one team that couldn't throw the ball in Baltimore, 155 passing yards under those circumstances. Baltimore gives up passing yards to everybody. Everybody. And the Bills got a season low 155 against them.
Yeah,
that's the piece of the equation that didn't add up.
Even with having to chuck it a million times because the run game went away because of the script. Yeah, you're spot on. Dude. And that's such a good point. Yeah, I'm really looking to that Detroit game again to really test their mettle. And we'll see. Hopefully, nothing happens to Detroit's guys between now and then. But I mean, Decker and Glasgow and Ragnow and Kevin Zeitler's played well for them this year. And then Penei Sewell is just an absolute monster. And that's the team, right, that can if we're talking about game script,
they will snatch your soul
in the first 10 minutes of the game. Yeah. They will snatch your soul, and all of a sudden you're looking around and being like, how is it 21-0 right now? What the hell is happening? And
can this be over? Yeah.
Yep. And with their running backs that they have, if you can't handle that line, it's not okay, their line's really good, but their backs are lackluster. Sonic and Knuckles, which is such an amazing nickname for a running back duo. I friggin' love it. They crush it. The line is great. The play action game that stems off the run, and then everything that opens up for Amon-Ra and Jamo and Laporta and even guys like Khalif Raymond, that's such a great, I think, test to see what they do. And the Rams is another one too. I'm really also interested to see the Rams from a motion, use our bigger bodied 11 personnel with Puka and Kupp to kind of mash you, seeing how the Bills handle their run game. That's also, I think, tying into it as well for me. It's not just the overall like interior defensive line or the D line in general. I really want to know like the rush piece, because you can't be a team that like, well, we're just going to go single high all the time. We're just going to gap out. You have to be able to stop it from an individual execution standpoint in some way, shape, or form. If not, you're going to get dusted when it matters most. Like it's fine enough to adjust as we go through the regular season, but like you said, you're going to, test metal on metal in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl. That's where those things really come to a head. And that's kind of where I'm thinking, like going up against the best, what areas are going to be the biggest concern? I hate that when we're in lockstep. I like it, but I also hate it for like a worry or a concern, because that makes me think it really is a big worry. It's not just like, oh, I'm being paranoid. And it's like, no, Greg, it is fantastic. All right. A fun one now on the other side again. Biggest area of strength going forward, not named Josh Allen. I had to put that because I'm sure everybody would be like, well, it's Josh Allen. He's the best. He's the greatest, so on and so forth. So, Joe, who or what is your biggest area of strength going forward, not named Josh Allen?
Yeah, I think there's some fun angles you could take on this one. But the thing that really stood out to me was that this is a defense that takes away the football. They lead the league with 21 takeaways. They get a takeaway on 18% of drives against them. I mean, that's crazy, man. And it's funny because there's so many talking points out there about, takeaways are random, but Sean McDermott, well, you saw the stat, right? He's been top 10 in takeaways for like 8 years in a row. It's crazy.
Nuts.
And it certainly feels like it's peaking this year. And I mean, what is the quote out there? You get what you emphasize. Obviously, they're emphasizing taking away the ball. They hunt. I mean, you got guys going and raking at the ball. You get passes that are errant throws because of the rush and how it's married up. Like they've had a takeaway in, what was it, like 13 games in a row, every single game this year. They've had mostly like multiple takeaways in every game. So I think that is huge. I think I'm very much a believer that outside of points for and points against giveaways and takeaways are the most correlative metrics to winning football games. And the Bills have been on the good side of both of that, right? Where they've only given the ball away a handful of times this year. And in fact, I have that information. The Bills have given away the ball 7 times. That's second lowest in the league. And they have the most takeaways. You're going to be that type of plus minus on turnovers. You're going to be in good shape. And that's for me, I thought the prevailing thought when I considered where this team is the strongest.
That's a really great point. And especially like you mentioned, pairing that in conjunction with the offense, not turning the ball over, like you're playing sound football on both sides. And kind of, that's another aspect of the complementary piece that works so well. And yeah, I think the turnover aspect also significantly contributes to the game script aspect as well. When the Bills turn it over, or I should say take it away from other teams, they continue to just play on that front foot and continue to mash you and grind you with the run game and continue to lean on you and get out in front and so on and so forth. And then you feel like you're really behind the 8 ball if you're the opponent. And then again, the opposite isn't happening. The Bills aren't turning it over. Again, no jinx. They're not putting the defense in bad spots. Continue and just possess the ball, wear teams down, grind. Like it's just such a tried and true formula for good teams year in and year out. Even if you don't have talent, it's a good formula that works. I really like that. Mine ties into a little bit of yours, because it's a group that has taken the ball away a lot and is responsible for a lot of the turnovers. I said the cornerback room, in particular for the Bills. Good. Yeah, Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, Taron Johnson, obviously a very strong top 3, but even the depth, Jamarcus Ingram giving you some inside-outside flexibility. Cam Lewis coming in and performing admirably in Taron Johnson's stead. Elam, very small sample size, but, some fun stuff in camp. Some nice pieces, to hopefully be excited about based on his one game against Miami, although he did get burned on that out and up by Tyreek Hill, but he also kind of recovered and almost made a play.
It's an out and up against Tyreek Hill, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's fair. And Tua did underthrow. There's a lot of context to it. Yeah. But, speaking specifically on that starting 3, Benford and Douglas and Taron Johnson, you just have this group capable of playing both the pass and the run with very little vulnerability. Playing the run is so important now, not just in the Bills defense. We know it matters a lot to McDermott, But you have to in today's day and age with how much the run game has come back. And Benford and Douglas regularly executing crack replaces and coming up as force players and turning the run back inside or coming up and making a tackle. And just with seeing that with regularity, even this past game, low red zone play against the Chiefs run counter and Tooney pulls and it's within the tight end box and Rasul just submarines him and takes him out and shuts off the entire outside. Tooney gets up and he wants the flag and Douglas is like, no, it's within the box. Like the ability to just do that to Tooney and know where you are and know that it's legal and then be able to execute that physically. You've got this group between the three of them. You've got toughness and physicality mixed with being assignment sound and then various levels of athleticism. Taron Johnson is already an all-pro. Rasul Douglas on his worst day is still a solid CB2. And then Christian Benford, I had these notes going into this past week against Kansas City. Among 77 corners with at least 20 targets going into this past week, Benford was first in EPA per target, third in total EPA, 11th in success rate, fifth in quarterback rating against, first in yards per game allowed, and second in yards per attempt allowed. And I know some of those, target metrics don't necessarily indicate good sound coverage just because you're not, if you're not getting the ball thrown your way, you're not showing up on these. But when you watch the tape, you just see someone who is executing at a high level, just the pedal, the feet, the hips, the planning, the route recognition, the understanding of how to play various stems, the plays at the catch point, along with what he does against the run. Benford has really come into his own. And I think this corner grouping just gives you a skill set that allows you to match teams in a variety of ways, both against the run and the pass zone. I think they play man better than they get credit for. We saw it show up on a bunch of reps against Kansas City. They played more man this week than they normally do. So that corner grouping, I think, is the biggest area of strength going forward that is not named Josh Allen.
Yeah, and the splits when the Bills run man are really good. It's very effective. And even the blitz packages, the Bills don't play a ton of man. They don't blitz a ton, but their metrics when they do, boy, they're nice. And you wonder if it's something they should do more or they're just threading the needle perfectly, and that's why it's effective. But I like that being in the bag. And I felt like a few years ago they tried to do this. Leslie Frazier did, and it's like, man, I don't know that Levi Wallace is going to be your best option here to mirror and match. But I feel like they're kind of getting that version of their coverage packages that they wanted here recently. And the amount of cover one that they ran against Kansas City with mixing in some man and how they kind of had like the mirroring spy was a really good formula.
Yeah, that ability was just so good against Kansas City. Man coverage around 34% in that game against them. When they were blitzing, they were, throwing cover one blitzes, and Benford is locking down. Douglas is locking down. Taron's locking down. Also, like you mentioned too, like that odd mirror package creeping up again, with the 3-man and the aggressive spy. We saw it a little bit with a technically not odd mirror, but they did it with a 4-man and the aggressive spy with Terrell Bernard. That's what he got his sack on early in the game. And yet how that coverage has just tied in. And then the little tweaks here and there, like against Miami, going with more press, and you're watching Rasul Douglas like jam Tyreek at the line and then trail him well and get a PBU on a third down. Like just how flexible they can be in a variety of techniques and a variety of coverages and looks. And they do, I think their strength also helps mitigate some of the concerns up front from a pass rush perspective, because we've seen some coverage sacks that have resulted because the corners and the back seven in general have just been so locked down and so good from assignment and responsibility perspective. It's been really nice to see. Another fun one here. The team MVP thus far, again, not named Josh Allen. We are excluding him from the ballots. He is not allowed to be counted on this one. Joe, who do you got for your team MVP not named Josh Allen?
I think the fun part about trying to answer this is that there's a lot of good answers. You could talk me into a lot of players. I'm going down to the buzzer here. I came into this conversation wanting to say Greg Rousseau.
Okay.
I feel like he's just the guy that shows up every week with pressures and run defense and owning his space and just doing, like, not only making plays, but making plays that he doesn't get credit for. I'm going to go with Khalil Shakir. I just wonder, where is this passing offense without him? it feels like he's been the stabilizing player. It feels like in every game, really, I wouldn't say just wins, but in most of these wins, there feels like there's a Khalil Shakir moment where he's able to rip off a big one or make a tough catch over the middle of the field. And I feel like he truly does stabilize this offense. And I think the Bills did a disservice to him early in the year by not having Amari Cooper. I feel like the whole idea of like, hey, let's have these big bodies to win 50-50 balls on the perimeter and really occupy some attention is going to open up a lot of the middle of the field. And you didn't really have that. You learned some hard lessons along the way with like early season Keon Coleman and Mac Hollins. And it's like, well, yeah, Kincaid and Shakir aren't going to be as effective because your whole plan was for those guys to do what they're supposed to do on the perimeter. And it's like, still Shakir is able to make plays. I feel like he's so important for this offense. And I think as the full complement of weapons really opens up, I think he'll continue to do all the yards after catch stuff, but we know Joe Brady loves that slot fade, man. And there's some down the field stuff that's going to come here over the last 6 weeks with Khalil Shakir that I think is going to just add to what he does. I just feel like he's been such a stabilizing player for this offense. And kind of going back to that question, where would this team be without an insert? Greg Rousseau and Khalil Shakir feel like the two right names for me, but I think I'll lean more into the offensive player this time.
So it's funny you're saying like going down to the buzzer. Even now, like when I asked you it, I was still going through my notes and my possibilities of like, am I really going to stick with who? I guess there's multiple possibilities. I thought of Terrell Bernard. The reason I didn't end up going with him is because the person I picked played in more games than Terrell Bernard. I also thought, although Terrell Bernard, again, to kind of shade it the way, you put it, where would this team be without, this person? Even though Bernard plays at such a high level and, higher than Balin Spector, I thought Spector came in and performed admirably and did some things that I was like, okay, mitigate it a little bit, not to the level of Bernard, and Bernard takes it to another degree, but I was like, okay, that's that. I also thought of Taron Johnson, but then I thought in the same degree, like, okay, Cam Lewis came in, not playing at an all-pro level like Taron, but kind of mitigated some things. That, plus the games played, led me also to Khalil Shakir. Because my answer and I asked myself the same question, where would they be without this player? I also thought of Rousseau, too, to your point, and I love, real quick, Rousseau does so much that also doesn't get noticed. Like, he is a force multiplier, especially because of how he plays the run. He does so much that goes unnoticed and unrecognized with regularity. Like, even if he doesn't show up for the pass rush, I almost kind of don't care because he matters so much against the run and does so much with his physicality, his size, and his intelligence and his length and knowing how to play to it. But I landed on Shakir because the exact question, where would this team be without Khalil Shakir? And then I look at the rest of the pass catchers, right? Diggs goes away. Everything is supposed to be everybody eats. Everything is sunshine and rainbows. And we find out quickly that you kind of do need somebody that can play at that type of level. And you do need someone who can operate as a true X. They go out and they get Amari Cooper, which is nice, which is also why I thought this was an interesting answer from Robbie, who his answer was Cooper because he put every other receiver in the right place. And I kind of thought that was an interesting way to look at it. And I do agree with that to a degree, but so you need Cooper to come in and do his thing. And like you said, everybody kind of having to play to a higher level, mess some things up a bit, but Dalton Kincaid has been banged up this year and has been spotty. Keon Coleman has flashed positively as the season has gone along, but he's had his own inconsistencies. Curtis Samuel has been hurt. Dawson Knox is kind of what Dawson Knox is. I've really liked what Mac Hollins has done, but he's not going to be this premier type of wide receiver, right, although he's better than what he gets credit for. So many people are kind of making fun of him, like, oh, Mac Hollins, or he's going to be a guy who sees a ton of snaps. Yeah, he's a great blocker, and he's actually a better receiver than he gets credit for.
How about the clear out routes, like contrasting, like in the Kansas City game, thinking about Trent Sherfield running those routes last year, and defenses like just knowing, like, you are not on the menu. You are going through the motions. Mac Hollins friggin' runs every route like he's getting the ball, not to mention the blocking, not to mention just doing little things like drawing penalties and acting like he's going to catch the ball when it's not targeted, which frees up, the different things in the offense. The special teams has been outstanding. Mac Hollins, boy, if he's your wide receiver 4, you're doing things right.
Yep, that's exactly it. Like, I love him. If he's my wide receiver 2 or 1, I'm like, uh-oh, but
No,
as wide
yeah,
receiver 4, your bottom of the
yeah,
depth chart guy is tremendous. And he even multiple touchdowns this year against cover 0 because he's cooking safeties and beating
yeah,
guys inside on some routes. And even, he's not showing up on the box score because of it, but his ability to obstruct defenders legally when they run mesh is
yeah.
literally is it
And they
like
Bills run mesh all the time,
yes,
all the freaking time.
and he is so integral in that success week in and week out and freeing up whether it's the running back, the traffic mesh coming out of the backfield to cook like he set him up for in week 2 against Miami, or if it's the stuff across Shakir or Samuel, whoever he's setting up for. So good at that. But he's not this top tier passing option, although he plays his role well. All these other options in the pass game, for one reason or another, they've all presented various inconsistencies. This passing game has flowed through Khalil Shakir this year and continues to do so. He is the easy button. He makes his own yardage more often than not. He finds space in zone. He works with deception in his stems. I think one of the frustrations for me with all the yards after catch talk, which is valid, right? You just throw him a quick little tunnel screen or a quick little bubble and he takes it for like 8 to 12 yards with regularity. He's breaking tackles. He's showing contact balance. He looks like a running back once he gets the ball in his hands, just like he did at Boise State. The thing that frustrates me about that is I feel like it's really overshadowing how good he is in his routes and his stems. He knows how to find the windows. He knows how to find the space. He knows how to read coverage and settle in the zone. He operates with good deception in his stems. He is a craftsman when it comes to actually running routes. And then when he gets the ball, he's like this little mini ball of power and explosivity and contact balance when he gets the ball in his hands. And I thought the way you framed it, and it was the same way I framed it, where would this team be without this person? Again, statistically, Josh Allen's worst outing was against the Texans for a large majority of that game, and there was no Khalil Shakir that game. He does so much. He is a large, easy button answer. He's been a consistent game piece week in and week out, and behind the line of scrimmage, in the low intermediate, and the high underneath. Reliable hands, tough at the catch point, athletic, good route runner, crafty, all that kind of stuff. And that easy button piece, he's just been such a good answer. And how he ties into the run game, I think matters a lot, because we've seen so many RPOs or runs with pass tags where Allen is just doing how easy is it for Josh Allen to be like, what do we got? There's 8 in the box and it's the kind of 2-on-2 out there, and one of them's a safety. All right, I'm just going to spit it out to Shakir really quick, and he can get 9 yards minimum, and we'll kind of go from there. Like, he has been just such an easy button for the offense, and more importantly, Allen. I legitimately don't know where this offense is without Khalil Shakir, and so I'm 1,000% in lockstep with you there. Oh, all right. Next one. Got two more. I thought this one was kind of fun. Best newcomer. It could be anybody who was acquired this offseason or in season. Draft pick, free agent, trade. Amari Cooper counts, for those of you playing at home, and for Joe as well. Who's your best newcomer this year?
I have to go with Keon Coleman.
Oh, so did I.
I don't know how there's a different answer. Certainly has.
I thought of Hollins for all the reasons that we said.
You can make a case. You can make a case, but I mean, what's funny is that I think they tied for the team lead in receiving touchdowns. They both have 3 each. Yeah, they're both tied for the lead there. But I mean, it's disappointing that Coleman had the injury because I felt like he was really coming into his own.
Yeah.
Yards after catch, winning those leverage battles, showing some growth as a route runner.
Yes.
It's been good blocking. I think he's made Brandon Beane look like he made the right call after a lot of us wondered if this was really going to work out or if this was a type of receiver that Josh Allen could really grow with, just stylistically based on the guys that have been good for Josh in the past. He's really not like those players. So I think Coleman's been that guy. I can't wait to see him get back out there. And, like I said, I think once this entire complement of weapons is available for Josh, I think individually they're all going to be positioned to be what they're supposed to be, and Josh just has to, make the right decision with the ball continuously. But I think there's going to be a lot of good options, and I think Keon's been the best one. And I'm like I saw you've already given us that it's your answer. It's like who else do you even invoke to the conversation? I think it's pretty clearly him.
I could see someone saying Cooper, because, he allows everyone else to fit into where they should from a role standpoint and depth chart standpoint.
He's played
But
like a game and a half, like
exactly. That was my thing. The sample size just isn't there.
Yeah.
Although he's looked good when in there, but it's just not there. I thought of Hollins for all the reasons that we just listed in the previous category. What he's done on special teams, what he's done as a role player and as a blocker, but also as a pass catcher. Like even the Indianapolis game, he's catching multiple, hole shots. The scramble drill against Indianapolis at the end of the first half.
Unreal.
He's he is the number one away from the side that Josh Allen rolls to. He runs a dig and hauls ass all the way across field, sees that the safety has gone over and that his man has come up. He slips behind him and takes off. Even he should have another touchdown because Allen missed him against Houston on a tremendous little sluggo. Like Hollins was really up there for me. And it was close between him and Keon, but yeah, for everything you said, I went with Keon, and you hit all the points. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I just really wanted to also emphasize his progression this year in the finer points of the game. I still think he's a long way from where he needs to be in terms of a route runner, in terms of refinement and polish. But coming into this year, he was my wide receiver 9, but he was one of my favorite guys to talk about out of the draft class because he was my wide receiver 9. But I thought he could have such a wide range of outcomes in the league. Like I could have seen him being a really solid wide receiver 2, like a high end 2, or maybe a low tier 1. Or I could see him being out of the league in 4 years. Or I could see him being that guy who, after his rookie deal, keeps getting 1-year deals because every team is like, you know what? I can be the one to tap into those
Treadwell trades. Or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Literally that kind of guy. I can be the one to, get it out of him. I can be the one to bring it. And for what he's shown this year, just his progression little by little in the finer things. And again, he still needs to get there. I still don't love his footwork coming in and out of his breaks at times, and he needs more deception and pacing and things, but showing some improvements little by little, incrementally as the season has gone on, and then being able to play to the physical tools and the traits. It's not easy to live in a kind of contested world, contested catch world, power forward in the post, type of game. And we've seen him kind of work it with regularity. That catch, the one-hander against Seattle was just ridiculous. The back shoulder catch against Arizona, the couple against Baltimore, and he's had some drops along the way, but the little ugly pass tag that he didn't catch where it hits him, donks him right in the head against Houston, the one he botched against Miami that leads to the pick against Ramsey. But then he's also doing that same thing against Tennessee and taking it 50 yards down towards the red zone and into field goal territory. What he's shown. And again, like you said, I think it's been okay, it made Brandon Beane look pretty good for kind of trading down and, taking him and getting him where he got him. So yeah, it was close between Keon and Hollins. But I went with Keon just because of, I don't know, maybe more flashiness and sexiness, but shout out to Mac Hollins because I think he belongs in that kind of conversation. But other than those two, I don't see who. It's none of the other draft picks. It's none of the other acquisitions. And again, Amari Cooper, like you said, he has not played enough. Little fun one to end this for us, Joe. Favorite moment or play of the year so far for you?
I think the contenders here are pretty obvious. The rushing touchdown against Arizona for Josh Allen, where he hurdles at the end zone.
Hey, hurdles Buddha, who's one of the best safeties in the business. Yeah.
I think Taron Johnson's interception to close out the Jets game. That's a big one. They were down the field goal, and they had a chance to make that play, and Taron said no. I think the 61-yard field goal from Tyler Bass.
Oh, good call.
But it's Josh Allen on 4th and 2, man.
Fair enough.
It's enough said. Jim Nantz called it the play of the year in the NFL. It's the whole thing, man. It's the circumstances. It's the decision to go for it. It's Bills having man beaters and Kansas City running zone, but Josh Allen having the presence of mind to know that it's a bunch of mesh routes. And so the eyes are looking to cap routes. So it's kind of like man anyway. So you take the crease and making 4 dudes miss. Are you kidding? To beat the Chiefs and put them on ice? I think that's got to be the answer. But those are my contenders. Kind of curious to see where you go with this one.
So I think that's the obvious one. I went with 2 others as a little tie because I figured this would be yours or kind of everyone's answer. But yeah, that Allen 4th and 2, and I love how you highlighted it. I spoke about it on Twitter. just how that played out and how the Chiefs were so busy passing off the mesh. And they did a brilliant job. They took everything away. But with doing that, they parted the Red Sea and vacated the middle, and no one's watching Allen. And Allen sees it. He pumps to Ty Johnson and then immediately gets his eyes back and sees how everything disperses and is like, oh, okay. And then just takes off and runs through the heart of their defense. Like,
how many quarterbacks though get tackled by Karlaftis, right? You know.
Yes.
So
great call. Like how many guys like take off right when they take off or have the physical ability to get through all the people that he got through, not just the volume of bodies, but the kinds of bodies, like you mentioned, like Karlaftis, and then everybody downfield, like what he was able to do. And then, on fourth down against the Chiefs, how easy would it have been for us to all see in the movie that we've seen before? Kansas City got the stop, and then they go down, they kick the field goal, and they win 24-23, just like they do to everybody.
You know exactly what happens. Yeah, you kick the field goal. Pat Mahomes has, 2:10 left, and here's a game-winning pass to Travis Kelce after he caught 2 passes all game, and we're boo-hooing for 2 weeks.
Yep. Well, maybe Bass makes the kick, and they go down and score there. Maybe Bass misses the kick, or you get stopped on 4th and 2, and Kansas City just gets like another 25, 30 yards, and of course, some no-name kicker they brought off the street for Butker nails some like 50-yard kick, and they win, and they go to 10-0. Like, we've all seen that before. So the moment, I think, was great. That's got to be like the play of the year favorite moment. So mine, just to give another one, mine are super nerdy, and it's just because I'm a defense guy. The cover one mesh pass-offs for the Bills against Seattle and against the Colts. It is so hard in that coverage to properly pass off and change who the low hole player and who's covering the shallow and the drag, to pass all that off in the blink of an eye. It takes coaching. It takes individual recognition and execution and discipline. And then the fact of who it came with. So against the Colts, it was that one on 4th down. Flacco has to hold it. Quentin Jefferson gets the sack. But it's the normal guys you think. It's Bernard and it's Taron Johnson and then Cam Lewis because they're in dime. Against Seattle, Bernard was out, and it was Spector that was orchestrating that pass off, and it was the air traffic controller and calling it out. And it's so hard to get that. Okay, hey, let me communicate to the safety because the running back switched and he's going to be running the rail because it's mesh rail. So, okay, you got to take the running back. You're pushing out there. I'm sitting in the low hole. Here comes the mesh. I'm going to pick up the shallow. You're going to sit there and pick up the other drag. Taron, now you're going to sit and you're going to become the hole, or Cam Lewis is going to become that. To do all that in about a quarter or a half of a second, I think it speaks to the larger, and this is part of it. It's great in the individual execution in a vacuum, but I think it speaks to the larger point of how well this defense is coached, how good they are at adjusting, because they got beat on mesh earlier in the game against Seattle and earlier in the game against Indianapolis. But that's another example of how they course correct, how they identify as players, but also as a coaching staff, and how well the coaches are able to get backups and depth guys to execute at a high level in high leverage moments against good teams and good players. So I know that's super niche and detailed, but those two are going to stick out for me for forever. But again, they pale in comparison to, I guess, the actual correct answer. But I pocketed these just because I figured your answer and everyone else's would be the.
Yeah, you didn't think I was going to come in here with that, huh? All right, gotcha.
Well,
talk about split flow. Back. Yeah, I mean, what do you want to get
right? Oh, my favorite play was a 2nd and 7 split zone run by James Cook for 9 yards.
Take a hike, man. What was that answer, dude? Are you kidding me? No, yeah. Never changed, my guy. Never changed.
But yeah, that Allen play.
What's your favorite play? Well, against Seattle and Indianapolis, the way that they ran cover one and passed off routes.
Hey, man, it's great. But no,
I got bamboozled there.
If I had to give the answer is the Josh Allen run against Kansas City, but I knew that would be, so I'm like, I'm going to bring out these other cool tools. What I am interested to see is, I wonder if there is anything that tops the Allen run against Kansas City.
I hope not.
Like,
come on, man.
Yeah, that's going to be like, it would take something special because, like you said, it had everything, and not just the individual play, but who it was against, when it came, and how it came. I totally missed like the call of Nance saying like play of the year. That really could be. I wish it happened in like week 15 or 16 because I feel like that's like more of an MVP type of play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like instead of having your Heisman moment in like week 2 or 3, you want it like in, the Big Ten championship. Or I always think of Charles Woodson, housing that punt against Ohio State. Like you want it in later, but also in that big moment. I wonder if it came a little too early, but yeah, that's got to be the obvious one, aside from obviously how they played.
There was one punt return when Brandon Codrington fielded the ball off the hop instead of letting it go behind him, where it's like to save 30 yards of field position. That was probably my favorite play.
That's fair. We're in agreement. I just also mentioned these others because I knew what the answer would be.
You just wait. You just wait till the next time I'm on this show. You just wait to see what I come up with.
I'm very excited for that. I like the idea of kind of what you mentioned. It should have been harder. Yeah. But like, 2nd and 7, they go weeks, mid zone week for 6 yards. I really liked it because of this block. Oh man, that's funny. I like that. I'm going to start to wind down and send everybody on their merry way. But Joe, I know it's very late for you. I will let you go and be on your merry way first. You crushed it as always. I had a blast as always talking with you offline before you joined, and then the actual content of the show. A1 stuff as always, when it comes to anything and everything you do. Just in case people don't know who you are and what you do and where they can find you, the floor is yours. Plug anything and everything that you got.
Thanks, man. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, daily podcast on the Bills, do a daily podcast on the league, Locked On NFL Scouting. Also have the NFL First Read podcast with Brett Whitefield. We started doing that I guess we started over the summer. So 2 daily podcasts and another one that's twice a week. And of course, I got the Substack going as well. Herd Mentality, where I'm writing 3 to 4 articles a week there, producing content, man. I love the Bills, love Bills Mafia, and having a lot of fun. So thanks for having me on, and that's where you can kind of find all the work. I'm also on the Blue Sky. I don't know, what do you call it? Your handle? It's the same.
I don't know.
What do you, Joe Marino?
Okay, so same. I don't know. Yeah, if you call it the same thing. And also, what do you call like a tweet? A tweet, like a post on Twitter is a tweet. What do you call a post on Blue Sky?
I've seen a skeet. I've seen some people say skeet.
Skeet?
I don't know, man. I don't know, dude.
Like a Sky tweet. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. That's funny. But no, you are just the amount of stuff that you put out. Oh yeah, Lauren said the same thing too. It's called Skeet. So to K more, that's ridiculous. I love it. You are one of the hardest working dudes in the business, and the amount of the volume of content that you put out while not sacrificing the quality of it, I think is a true testament of just, how good you are at what you do and how much you've honed your craft. And I respect the hell out of you. This was an absolute blast for a multitude of reasons and a multitude of moments. And I appreciate you as always. I will DM you after this to sing your praises again in written form, but enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Get some sleep. This was awesome. I appreciate the hell out of you. And thank you very much again.
Thanks, brother. Enjoyed it.
Have a good one.
See you, dude.
One of the best in the business, Mr. Joe Marino. Let me grab this super chat from, I don't want to get yelled at by Carl again for missing the super chat. I saw it. Carl said, "What do I do on Sunday with no Bills game on?" I tell you, I just enjoy, if I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I just enjoy the day without having to worry about like the Bills game. I don't have to take super in-depth notes during a game. I can just sit and watch whatever's on. I'll put Red Zone on my iPad or on the TV and put, a certain game on my iPad versus the TV and kind of just figure it all out. But I think you just chill, enjoy the day, depending on where you live, enjoy the weather, maybe go out for a walk in the morning, just relax, just enjoy the day, kick your feet up, enjoy some football. There's some good soccer on this weekend. So if you're a soccer guy, maybe watch some soccer in the morning or a little throughout the afternoon. If that's the poison you want to pick, just enjoy the day and not have to worry about the stress of your team playing. Unless you also play fantasy football, then every weekend is hell because fantasy football is hell. But yeah, okay. You got some suggestions here. Pop says cheer for whoever is playing the fish. K. Morty says watch the demise of the other AFC East teams. Yeah. So kind of just, it's kind kind of just whatever you want. Joe says, it's impossible for me to relax. I must become anxious on another team's behalf. I think a lot of people just do that for fantasy too. Like there is no relaxation. This is the second year in which I've done no fantasy football because I just got to a level of absolute insanity and intensity when it came to fantasy football in terms of my anger and frustration. And that's as a person who I was making championships and winning leagues, but I got to the point where like I was winning leagues and it didn't feel good anymore. It just felt like I could breathe. And I was like, this isn't healthy. I got to scale it back. And it's been awesome not having to worry about anything. And just sitting back and relaxing. It's been a very nice thing. I like this from Lauren. Lauren, you're the best. Lauren says, go buy your wives some nice Christmas gifts and get ahead of the curve. And then she blind CC'd my husband. That's good. That's super good. Oh, that's super good. Yeah, or take Lauren's advice. Go out and get some Christmas gifts. I like that. The BCC got me. The blind CC got me. Oh, that was really good. I hope you folks enjoyed this episode. I'm going to throw up the banner that says, actually, no, I'm not going to throw up the banner because there is something that I want to bring up. I spoke about it last week on the show in regards to the sponsor, One Pie Pizza. And so I want to bring it up again. I'll be sending tweets out about it and regular communication in pieces and all that kind of stuff. But you folks know the sponsorship with One Pie Pizza, and I bring it up every year. We'll just give it the graphic for the entire screen itself. I always talk about the food and how great it is, the pizza. I think it's the best in Buffalo, and I don't say that because they partnered with me and sponsored the show. They partnered with me and sponsored the show because I think they're the best. But I always talk about them every week with the initiatives they do for the community and the city, partnering with Roswell to try and knock out cancer, partnering with the SPCA, partnering with the Alzheimer's Foundation, and then Toys for Tots every year. So they are well in the midst of engaging in Toys for Tots now. And you can see a little graphic I have up here. Drop an unwrapped gift into our Toys for Tots donation box and receive a chance to win one of many great prizes. This year's prizes include a signed Josh Allen custom jersey, a signed James Cook custom jersey, 1 free pizza a month for a year, 4 free pizzas, and then 5th place is 1 free pizza. They are the best when it comes to pizza and Buffalo. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, a great cheese to sauce ratio, as I know Joe DeRosa is a fan of. They make their own homemade blue cheese. They also do catering, breakfast pizzas, whole bunch of different like options there. Their food is truly great, and they also do a lot of good for the community. I said it last week, Christmas is my favorite time of the year, and I know it is for a lot of other people as well. But it can also be kind of a sad or stressful or worrisome time of year for a lot of folks, parents, kids, just different stuff. So if you can donate, and even if it's not to, One Pie, if it's to a charity or to a church or somewhere, something where you can give back and try and brighten the lives of families or kids or whatever, just trying to make sure that every kid gets a gift or a present on Christmas. I think that's a very awesome thing. I'm just plugging this because I know they're doing it. I know where you can drop the toys off, and you can also get some delicious food while you're at it and a chance to win a prize. So if you're in it for the food, that's cool. If you're in it for the kids and the donation, that's cool. Or if you're in it for pure selfishness because you want to try and win a prize, I guess that's fine as well. But go check out One Pie Pizza. Stop by, drop a toy off. You get a ticket for every toy that you drop off. So if you drop off 5 toys, you essentially get 5 chances to win one of these prizes. So go and do that if you folks would not mind and are able to do that. Thank you very much for that. Suspinar says Blue Sky handle. It's not in the description. I will put it. My Blue Sky handle is, so there's no underscore. I just put it into the comments. Actually, let me confirm what it is. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It is just, it's just Pro Ant. No underscore. They wouldn't let me put underscores, which is ironic because I wanted to just do Pro Ant on Twitter when I created my handle, but somebody else already had Pro Ant, and then someone else had Pro Ant with just 1 underscore. So that's why I went with the 2. But now you're not allowed underscores or like weird characters on Blue Sky. So it's just Pro Ant. Yep. Got it there. I'm putting out the same content there. Basically everything that I post on Twitter, I post to Blue Sky. Dennis says Blue Sky, just know, let's keep cover 1 apolitical. What is Blue Sky like a political? I don't know anything. I didn't join Blue Sky for anything political related. I just did it because a couple of people I know did it. And so I just copy and paste my tweets and put them into Blue Sky. It's not nothing to do with politics for me. But yeah, so actually I'll pull it up right here. Oh, can I pull up my own comment? Oh, I can. Yeah, that's my Blue Sky handle. So again, it's similar content to what I'm putting out on Twitter. Just pretty much copying and pasting stuff. And Joe says it's Blue Sky, but my skies are gray when there's no Bills football. If I could, I kind of want it. I can't kick you out of like the room. Can I? No, I can't. What can I do? I can ban, I can put a user in a timeout. I might put you in a timeout. How dare you for your corniness, but I appreciate it. Yeah, this was a good time. Appreciate you, Sussman, for asking about the Blue Sky handle. So yeah, folks, check me out on Blue Sky. Check me out on Twitter. There's nothing political about it for me. I just talk football. I don't even get into my personal life on anything with Twitter or Blue Sky. I'm not posting anything of me or my family or friends or dinners I eat or vacations, let alone politics. I just post football content, Bills stuff, NFL stuff, X's and O's, schemes, structure, advanced metrics. That's the only reason I'm on Blue Sky, so I can share more of that and try and continue to gain traction in this community. Very, very, very grateful for Mr. Joe Marino dropping by on this episode and spending all the time with me. He crushed it as always. If you folks are not consuming what Joe does, which I'm assuming a lot of you are, you should be. Check him out on Twitter at the Joe Marino. Same handle for Blue Sky as well, at the Joe Marino. Does a lot of great stuff. Many thanks to him for riding with me for into the wee hours in the night for him and having this really fun, awesome conversation. Thank you very much to everybody who tuned in live for this episode. That was very, very, very awesome. I thought this was a fun kind of concept. Some awards and superlatives. I'm thinking about doing something similar at the end of the year, maybe a couple points in the off season. I think it's fun to kind of quantify things, rank things, and hand out awards and superlatives at different points throughout the year. So I thought this was a fun episode and really good attendance and engagement from all of you in the live chat. So thank you very much for that. If you have not already, please drop a like on this video. If you are watching live, it goes a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Even if you're not watching live and you're watching later here on YouTube, that's cool. Please still drop a like. Whether you're here live or not, please turn on notifications for the Disguise Coverage playlist. Subscribe to the Cover One channel. And if you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show is. If you thought the show was terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show. Go check out One Pie, get yourself some delicious food, and also drop off some toys for Tots. I appreciate all the kind words from myself and Joe throughout the entirety of this episode. Oh, thank you very much for that one, Carl. I like the muffins and the blueberry reference. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for tying in the intro. And also, Carl, thank you very much for just being here in general and for your 2 super chats. I really appreciate it. That was very awesome to see. Again, I appreciate you folks. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. Enjoy the bye week. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns on anything and everything, feel free to get at me on Twitter or at me on Blue Sky. I will see you tomorrow for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. And if not then, until I see you next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Disguise Coverage, I'm Anthony Prohaska. I greatly appreciate you folks. Godspeed. And as always,